Hello, this is Dimitri. I'm deciding to continue my blog. So I'm fairly happy right now in many ways, three ways in particular. Um, and the reason why I say that is somewhat as a pretentious name drop to this kind of TED conference I just listened to. I re-listened to because I listened to this actually a year ago, and I imbibed a great deal of meaning from it. But with all great educated works, all the great works, you can listen to it again, and despite the original impact that it had in your life at that point, you still find something new in it, or something of refreshed relevance. So the thing about this is, and I think I've got a note. Well, I think I'll make sure to note this, because I've been very afraid recently of falling into ruts and staying in a rut, going off into nirvana or whatever. And I can really, based upon this lecture by Martin Seligman, the head of the psychology um, Psychology Association of America, I'm really able to I'm really able to put into perspective a lot of things which I felt like they were questions that I knew must have answers, but now I know them much more clearly. I know why certain things bother me. I know why I get frustrated with Facebook and trying to spread my message in the printed word, because the fact is, this way of vlogging is much more effective than blogging using Facebook, where most people will not read it for inexplicable reasons. Um, and uh, and it's really, for me, it's probably of secondary preference personally to writing. And of course, writing, again, you have a target audience. It takes a very hell long time. So, but what I want to talk about is these three different types of happiness that Professor Seligman talks about. He describes, and I'll break it down really quickly. He describes these three different states, and it's almost like this Kierkegaardian or Nietzschean breakdown. There's the first state, which almost parallels with Kierkegaard's whole premise of the what do you call it, the the aesthetic life. And then there's and it's what Nietzsche calls the roughly the life of the sheep, and it's the pleasant life. It's the life uh, of gratification. It's basically the life that most people are living on Facebook. Let's be honest. It's a life where that I can no longer really relate with, which is, I mean, I'm thankful to recognize this as a fact, because I don't even understand people living this life. It's a life of, I have my own, basically. That's not how he phrased it, but I have my own, and I'm going about doing this and that, and all giggles and all smiles and all extroversion, and it's a life that Hollywood presents to us as the idealized life. But I find it to be a bit ridiculous, and Martin Seligman pointed out it's not. It doesn't really make people happy. Not really, because it's not reliable. It's too, it's too dependent upon circumstances. It habituates. It doesn't really get you anywhere. Now the second tier was one that I find most deeply mysterious, because it's the life of flow. And the life of flow is a very interesting life. And I've known people who are really good musicians, things like that. They can just get into this flow state, which is a state which I always, when I first encountered the description of this state, I knew what they were talking about. I read about it, and it's like, yes, this is what it is. But it's such a mysterious state because we are not educated to really acknowledge it, although our education helps us to attain it. And it's a state that I'm quite familiar with. Childhood was basically the state. It's the play state. It's the state where you do not have enough attention left over, because so much of it has gone to this activity, that all of your self consciousness, all of your attention, all of your fixation upon yourself, all of your time itself, all your social programming disappears. It's basically like the inverse of schizophrenia. I had a schizophrenic friend who I don't think is ever in this state. He was always in the opposite state, totally mired in his beliefs, extremely self-conscious, just constant self-awareness. But the state of flow is a state that I've encountered. I'd say I went into depression in high school because I didn't have enough of this state. The only time when I really broke through to this other world, to this, it's really another world. It's not an altered version of this one, but it's like you went through a portal into another universe. The only time that I really have broken into this ecstatic state that I remember breaking into it in high school was when I was in the speech and debate team. And imagine just standing in front of people, and you're not given any really much time to prepare, but you're expected to improvise a speech and an argument to something which you may not even have any knowledge of. And it's the most trippy thing. It's like it's really the thing that people use drugs to arrive at a shortcut to arrive at, because there's no way that drugs could be any better than this. It's this feeling like you're just you're in another dimension, basically. But then there's a third type of happiness. And the third type of happiness is the life of meaningfulness. And this is something that I feel like I've really, and many of my friends I know have really arrived at in their recent life. And, I normally tend to go back and forth between, like, this type of happiness and depression. Because when you really live the meaningful life, that is, when you sacrifice for others, when you develop a value system like that, you really, it becomes hard really to have fun as much, because you sacrifice so much of yourself. You just know, apart from altered states and all that ecstatic experience, it's sanctity, not ecstasy. It's the feeling of you are a channel for this universe, and you can forgive all and all of that. And now this is how I'm interpreting these three states. It's pretty much the Kierkegaardian, aesthetic, moral, and religious states. Except rather than a moral state, it's more like it's the same feeling of when Kierkegaard describes like a moral awakening. It's a rebellion against society. It's a rebellion against social norms when they become corrupted. The kind of angst, not angsty, but just a kind of energized rebellion. A kind of that is roughly the passion of the ecstatic state, which is the